Hey everyone, Matt Landfair here with Primary and Secondary. Welcome to ModCast. This is episode 213. It's amazing we're that far. Matter of fact, Primary and Secondary has been around for almost 5 years now. I believe next week or the week after that will mark 5 years. It's crazy. Today's episode, we are focusing on this Chad Albrecht guy and the School of the American Rifle. Unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation out there about AR-15s. There's not enough knowledgeable people trying to spread good info. Unfortunately, there's a lot of Dunning-Kruger. A lot of people are filling in the blanks of what they think the answer should be instead of researching it, doing a little bit of book work, looking up some things, and using reliable sources. So we're going to address some of these issues. We're also going to talk about his company. So before we start up, big thanks to our sponsors. Big thanks to Filster Holsters. If you're looking for an ambidextrous near universal holsters for pistols that are compatible with an X300U or a Surefire, or that was a Surefire, or a Streamlight TLR1 HL, look for that floodlight. Basically, what you're looking at is it is an appendix carry holster. It's modular. You can change up your attachment points. You can add the flex system, which is really cool. If you're not familiar with the flex, you should probably look it up. Basically, if you own a bunch of handguns, and a lot of them have weapon lights, and you like that whole weird carry rotation thing, that might be a good holster for you because you just need one of those, and it's compatible with all kinds of pistols. Also, big thank you to Faxon Firearms. My buddy Nate has been beating up this Faxon sub pistol caliber carbine. He's been loving it. He's been posting videos. We're supposed to be doing some videos here in the near future. Unfortunately, it's just a matter of scheduling to get it done. That seems to be an ongoing issue for everything with primary and secondary. It's all about the schedule. But Faxon has all these cool stuff. If you happen to need new barrels for your AR, for your AK, for your M1A, for your pistol, a Glock, Smith & Wesson, you name it, they have them. But they also have complete uppers. They have complete pistols. They might even have what you're looking for as we speak. So you probably need to go to Faxon Firearms online and check them out. Also, big thank you to Walther Firearms. This episode is brought to you by the letters P, P, and Q. I really like this pistol. It is very nice. In my opinion, it has the nicest striker-fired factory trigger right out of the box. Don't need to upgrade anything. Don't need to do anything to it. It's really nice how it is. Additionally, its direct competitor, I would say, would be the Glock 19. Everyone says Glock 19 is the holy grail of carry pieces. For me, that's not so because my hand is just a little bit too big, and I'm a big fan of pinky support. The PPQ actually provides pinky support, unlike the 19, as if you're watching on video, you can see my hand is not hanging off the grip. That's not an issue for everyone, though. Also, big thank you to our Patreon subscribers. If you go to patreon.com/primary and secondary, you can help support the network. Speaking of helping support the network, we have a very, very big training event coming up. We have, Chad will be there. We have a bunch of people who will be there teaching all kinds of classes in bite-sized little nuggets, and it will go right into the meat of the subject. I'm kind of excited about this. I'm going to be talking about this way more next month, but keep your eyes peeled and listen for more info. Because we're looking to break some inertial barriers or some inertia. Institutional inertia? That's what I'm trying to say. It's been a long day. That's exciting. We have pretty much most of the people that you associate with primary and secondary, the good guy instructors, industry folk, are all going to be participating, and we're all going to be coming together and trying to make a change. Yeah, good times. Good times. All right, my background's in law enforcement, been doing it for over 20 years. It's a good time. It's not for everyone. And unfortunately, the public seems to have, they kind of fall back on what they know. And, it's kind of understandable. If you're just fed TV and movies on what police stuff and police procedure is, it kind of makes sense why someone would kind of lean towards that and think that's the way. It's not. There's a lot more going on. No 2 days are the same. Always learning. It's a good time. As a matter of fact, the reason why primary and secondary started was to help out law enforcement, to help people like me out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by people who don't necessarily care to expand their horizons, to get together and compare notes. And here we are now. Now we're able to help way more people, and we get we get notifications from people on a regular basis that we're helping all kinds of people. And it's wonderful to be able to help those people. And that's also where that training thing comes in. Those Patreon guys get first dibs, just so you know. All right. So enough from me. I think I'm going to pick on this Chad guy because it's kind of focusing on him. So Chad, first off, tell me about you. Where'd you grow up? What'd you do? How'd you find yourself gravitating towards firearms?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me, Matt. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to your audience. It's a big honor for me. The way I got started into the guns was pretty much me not being able to have toy guns when I was a kid. I was raised from my grandparents, and he got shot when he was a young man, so he was pretty much anti-gun because of that. And he didn't like the idea of me playing with guns, so it had the opposite effect on me. So as soon as I was old enough to buy a gun, went and bought a shotgun because I grew up in Maryland, and you have to hunt with a slug gun here in Maryland unless you go out into the mountainous areas. So started hunting with my stepfather. Really wasn't big into hunting. I gravitated more towards military style guns. So I would constantly bother my local gunsmith. His name was Scott, run Scott's Gunsmithing out of Glen Burnie. So I'd leave high school and go hang out at his shop and, basically waste his time. And I wasn't old enough to buy a handgun, but I would just, kick the tires all day long. And he took a liking to me. So we got to be friends, and he started the place with his dad. He's a graduate of the Colorado School of Trades. And he had been gunsmithing at that point, I think, for 25 years. So him and his dad were doing their shop for a couple years, and his dad got cancer, passed away. And I popped in one day to give him my condolences, and he was like, hey, I've seen the stuff that you tinker with. I think you have the eye for being an apprentice, maybe even a gunsmith. So how about when you're not working your regular job, you come in and I'll teach you what I paid to go to school for. So I said, sure. And I figured I'll use the money for toys. Didn't need the money. It was more of a supplemental thing. So I started doing that, and that was in 2004, 2005, memory serves me right, and did that, and did really well at it. I was apprenticing for a lot shorter of a period than he wanted me to. He said it was going to take a couple of years. I think after 9 months, he was like, I'm done teaching you what I can, and he cut me loose. So he wouldn't stand over my shoulder. He wouldn't watch me. He would just say, here, do this. So it was a big pat on the back. He had a lot of confidence in me. He's not an easy person to get that from. So I did that for a long time, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, but when you get to be known for something locally, people knew me for working on military style guns. Mainly, I was an AK fan, so it sort of makes me sick to think about it now, but that's what I gravitated towards, block cut type guns.
That's not a bad thing.
No, but I did that for a while, and a lot of people were bringing me work for that type of gun. My mentor, he was more geared towards sporting guns, over and under, side by sides. He's a wizard with anything. A true master gunsmith. He can make something out of nothing. But I gravitated more towards the military guns, so I got to get a name locally for military style guns, specifically semi-automatic sporting rifles. And after working on AKs for a couple of years, I was like, I really don't like these things much. It was the difference in them being from country to country, the parts not being quite compatible. A lot of people assume because it's an AK, the parts all fit, but really outside the fire control group and the furniture, for the most part, they're not. So being a gunsmith, working on everything under the sun, I got to dislike guns that I couldn't get parts for. That was a constant battle. So if anybody's been in that kind of environment before, you realize that when you get a gun and you have to make a part or source a hard to find part, people get mad at you. They're like, well, what's taking you so long to fix that gun of mine? I'm like, look, I can make something, but it's going to cost you this, or I can wait for the part to get in stock and it's going to cost you that. So I started to appreciate, I bought in all the old tales of, the ARs, this little princess that has to be clean. It's very sensitive. It can't handle anything. And as I started to work on them more and more, I started to appreciate them more and more. Those and things like Glocks, things that I could just open up the Brownells book or whatever and say, hey, I need a part, let me get it. So I started to get to be known locally for working on black rifles, AR specifically. It got to the point where I couldn't do the gunsmithing job as much anymore. So when I would come in, people would sort of work their schedules around, hey, when Chad's going to be at the shop. So they would pop in, and I would have these little miniature classes for the most part. People coming in with questions, just like what you run into with primary and secondary. People are hungry for fact and experience. They don't want fluff and show. So I would do these little miniature classes in the shop. There'd be 10, 15 people all just sitting there listening to me talk about stuff, and that wasn't the intent. I was basically just trying to support my friend who runs the shop, sell products. I would say, okay, well, here's this trigger group, here's this rail system, here's what it'll do for you, et cetera, et cetera. And it was difficult because I was a gunsmith, so I'm paid to be at the bench. So when I'm up at the front counter talking to people, I'm not making the boss money. So I tried to limit that as much as I could, but people kept hounding me. The stuff you do in the shop is really needed. And right about this time, it wasn't something that was not being done. There were people like Will Larson from Apparatus that was doing classes. This is right around the 2013 mark, 2014 mark. But I was really hesitant. I was like, I'm an internal guy. I don't like to talk to people. I just like to go to my bench, be left alone. And I really resisted. So as I had less and less time to be a gunsmith, I got more and more people hounding me saying, hey, you really need to do these classes. So I started offering classes, and I tried to bring in my former employer. He really didn't think it was a good idea. He thought maybe it would cause the industry to bring less business. And it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. He was just worried that, I'm sure if you've seen it, people get in over their head. They start dremeling on things and banging on things they shouldn't be banging on. So it was his opinion that I was going to be teaching someone to be more confident in something they shouldn't be doing. So he had no hard feelings about it. And at that point, I pretty much went on my own way. This was around 2014, 2015. And started School of the American Rifle. Just did a couple small classes locally. And that's pretty much how it was fed up until about 9 months ago. And I was content with that. I would do very small classes, mostly local guys. I'd say 90% of them were from where I am in Maryland. And then people on Facebook and stuff started picking up on some of my work. And I got in a little bit over my head.
So what you're saying is all this positive publicity has been a bad thing? I know you're not saying that.
It's difficult because I would usually schedule about, I don't know, four or five classes a year. And it got to the point where I was announcing a class and it was booking up in like a day. And I don't do large classes. My armorers classes are like an 8-person class. My build classes are 4 people. And they take a long time because I'm very thorough about what I do. So I try to at least schedule them every other weekend, because if I try to do them every weekend, I'm dead on my feet. They're really hard on me. So, but yeah, I've announced classes and I'm booked up until April of next year. So I'm trying to sit back and just say, hey, everyone, put the brakes on. Let me get some more classes out of the way, and then schedule some more. But I'm not mad about it. I'm just a little bit overwhelmed right now.
So do you have a team, or is it just you?
Mainly it's just me. I have 2 younger sons that still live at home with me, and they're only 12 and 9. So they, they're not teaching, of course, but they, they'll come in and help me pass out stuff. And if the overhead doesn't work, they'll sit at the laptop and advance screens for me instead of using the clicker. But I have students, some of them that have been to dozens of classes, that will sometimes volunteer to come help, because they tell me they can't contain all the info. It's like from a wire hose, the term they use. So every time they come, they're like, wow, I learned something new. And I'm like, I already taught you that. But I guess it takes a while to stick. And it's hard too. If you don't do this kind of stuff day in and day out, work on guns for a living, it doesn't stick. You forget it and you become a little bit complacent. So they enjoy helping me, and it's a blast. I mean, I enjoy doing it. It's physically demanding, but I enjoy doing it.
So how has starting your company changed your outlook on working on guns?
Well, when I was working as a gunsmith, I got to see the behind the scenes. Guns are most people's hobby that are in this world. So when someone tries to do something to make a living off of it, people are like, "Well, hey man, I'm your bro. You can't charge me that for it." So it gets difficult because you have people that you're close to that, you as a friend, you want to take care of them, but they just want to do their hobby, and they realize there has to be a balance there. And that's probably one of the bigger eye openers about it all. A lot of the things that you hear people talk about, whether it be the internet or just, at the hunting club, a lot of the stuff is just wrong. It's just, wives' tales passed down. And it takes a lot of time banging on guns, hammering on guns to realize that a lot of the stuff you think you know, you really don't know.
So who'd you say
it's been a humbling experience.
I can imagine, especially considering where you are right now in that demand.
Yes.
So who would you call your influences in all of this?
My influences will probably be people that made me mad. So I would see stuff like on different forums and Facebook groups. Facebook, of course, later on, because I wasn't as much on it for that kind of thing. But basically just stuff on the internet, whether it be YouTube, and just so many people touting themselves as experts that were just wrong. And I had never taken any formal training for the AR or any of that kind of stuff. It was just basically forged in fire. I got a gun tossed in my lap and I had to figure it out. So it was just a lot of wrong information, and it made me want to seek out answers for particular guns. And since I had an affinity for the AR, that's what I wanted to focus on. I learned, being a general gunsmith, if I was ever going to go out on my own, there's no money in being a general gunsmith. You will make a living, but you're never going to be known for that, because you're the jack of all trades, you're the master of none. So I wanted to, and I learned that just by looking at things. You look at almost anyone in the gun industry that is known for something. They're known for doing one thing. They do it really well. So I sought out to do one thing and just really give it my all. And but yeah, the internet is what really got my gears grinding. It was like, I got to do something about this. And like I said, people like Will Larson and other schools, they were already doing it. But I wanted to throw my hat in the ring and see if I could offer something in addition to it. And a lot of my students have had other formal education, whether it be certified armorers courses, or they've been to a gunsmith school. They do it as in addition to what they already know. So it's always nice when someone comes to a class. My last one was full of law enforcement guys from a local agency. And all of them were certified with either FN or LWRC or Colt. And they're like, "You're teaching me stuff they never even brought up." So when someone tells me things like that, it makes me realize I'm on the right path, at least. And I tell students I'm not the keeper of all the knowledge. There are guys in this industry that have been doing the AR longer than I've been alive. So I'm just a source of info. I'm not the only source.
That was one thing that I've greatly appreciated with Will's classes. I've been to several other specific brand courses, Smith & Wesson and Colt, and I don't remember who else. They were very, part A goes to part A, look at diagram 1, it's supposed to look like this, where when Will taught it, it was about the entire theory. This is how it should work. This is why this was working. If you're encountering this issue, these are the issues you need to look at, as opposed to going to a Colt class. Okay, if that's not working, you replace this, and that is all. Not a better understanding. And it sounds like you are absolutely embracing understanding the entire system versus we go step by step like robots and not have an understanding of how this actually works.
Absolutely.
So you said also some of your influence has been YouTube and people spreading inaccurate information. Are there any clues that you can provide those listening or watching? How do you determine someone is absolutely clueless? Are there any things that basically they say or do something and you go, that guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, dislike?
That's hard to pinpoint because it gets really vague. It's one of those gut feelings is the best way I can describe it. You being law enforcement, I'm sure you're aware of it. Something just ain't right by the way they talk about it sometimes. And I have been wrong before. I've never went full stupid and like laid into somebody and be like, whoops, I shouldn't have said it to that guy. But I've thought it in my head sometimes, and I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I kept my mouth shut. Because you just never know, especially with social media. People aren't going by their real names, and it's hard to dig up stuff sometimes. So, but yeah, usually it's a gut feeling. I mean, the standard stuff is, when people start asking technical questions, like, I just bought this gun and blah, blah, blah. What buffer should I put it? And immediately people start saying, well, put this buffer in. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. There's a lot more variables there than just saying this gun should run on this. Unless we're talking about a factory Colt that I know the gas port size, stop. Because we don't know. Got to break out the pin gauges. We got to start checking things. How efficient is your gas system? There's a lot of variables that go into it that people don't even consider because they've been told by somebody else. Oh, you need this. Why do you need it? I want people to understand why they may or may not need those things. But yeah, it's more of a gut thing, and I wish I had a better answer for you there. It's a good question. I think I need to think on it some more.
I love the why. I love the why because it helps understanding. And without it, again, it's robots, it's ones and zeros, and there's no feeling, there's no true understanding. So how do you define armor versus gunsmith?
That's something that people ask me all the time. They ask me at the end of this class, will I be a gunsmith? Will I be an armor? And I always answer no. Whether you're going to be an armor or gunsmith, it really is determined by how much time you can put into it. You are not going to be an armor if you're only working on 6 guns a year, and it's the stuff that you're working on your own bench that is fine. You need to be working on a flow of things to learn different things, to troubleshoot problems. You need to have a steady flow of work. So whether you're helping out a buddy at a shop or you have a bunch of friends who are in the industry that use your place, you sort of just hang out and, bang on some guns. You really need experience. So the way I differentiate armors and gunsmiths, though, is a gunsmith will make more modifications than an armorer will. So, and that's where my courses are probably different from most armorers' courses. I teach a little bit of gunsmithing in my classes. We do break out Dremel tools. We do break out files. We do fit things. We polish things. So the AR has sort of become the 1911. In its base format, 30, 40 years ago, they were good. But as more people have put their, hands into that pie, things don't play well together. So this is where the fitting and sometimes comes in, and this is where I try to educate people on where to stop. I'll teach you a method or a few methods, and then I'm trying to arm you with the knowledge of whether or not your skill is capable of pulling off the next task you're thinking about doing. And if you're not, then you need to reach out to somebody who is. And hopefully that knowledge will then tell you whether or not the person you're reaching out to is the right guy for the job, or right gal. Sometimes there's gals doing it. But I want to at least arm them with the knowledge, okay, say, oh, well, I need a front sight base installed and taper pinned. You don't want to take it to the gunsmith that doesn't have the equipment to set up for that, and he's doing it with his cordless drill. Want to make sure he's got a fixture or something that can do it right, a good mill. But that's essentially the way that I treat the two. As a gunsmith can fabricate parts, he will fit parts, and armor for the most part is taught, okay, if this part doesn't work, this is what you need to do to replace it, and maybe make some fittings. And it's not meant as an insult to people who are armors in any way, because what I respect about armors is they're normally more of an expert in a few guns than the general gunsmith is. The general gunsmith doesn't know these things about the AR unless they've taken a course-specific class for it. They know how to take one apart. They know how to put it together. They know how to change a barrel. But they're not really knowledge on it. Like they couldn't tell you what the difference of headspace is between 223 and 556. They're like, oh, it's the same. No, it's not. But that's what they know. They're not going to kill anybody by getting that wrong, but there is a difference. The armorers have more knowledge, but they don't get into the wild modification stuff.
So would you say, you said you incorporate files and Dremels in your courses. Would you attribute that to your background with AKs?
A little bit, yeah. Overall, it's a little bit with everything. I mean, I took a liking to working on 1911s too, because there's just there's a level of satisfaction when, and I'm not trying to make this so I'm gearing it towards men, but there's just something about, filing on, welding on, soldering, it's just, there's something satisfying about it, being a man doing that kind of thing. When you work on guns like the 1911 or you do something like an AK, it's satisfying work. You're banging stuff together. It's manly stuff. So people like it. And when you think about the AR, you don't think about those kinds of things. You think about, oh, a nice clean workbench, and you have a couple little tools, and you have your little mat laid out, and get a little cup of tea. It's really not like that. If you really want to build a good gun, you got to get mean with it sometimes. That's why I always joke to people, there's no viewing window in a gun shop that works on guns, because you don't want to see what goes on back there. It's like sausage factory.
So right now we have an abundance of accessories, parts, tools, all kinds of stuff. And a lot of that stuff might be unneeded. Are there any things that come to mind that you found to be just unneeded, that are just, whether it be silliness or it's just they're taking people on for a ride?
Yeah, there is a lot of that. And I buy that stuff because I have an obsession about trying things out before I crap talk them. And I can be brutally honest with some things. And then I take some flack for others. Like for instance, armorers wrenches. I think I have like 6 or 7 of them, the general purpose armorers wrenches. And my favorite is the Tapco. And I've had people say, well, I don't even want to take a class from you because you like the Tapco wrench. And I'm like, yeah, Tapco, you don't think about them being something that you would like, but that one thing, they happen to do it well. I mean, the Magpul wrench is fantastic, but the Tapco works for what you see more on the civilian side. Now, if you were law enforcement armor, it's no purpose of having the Tapco. The Magpul would be the one I go to, because you're not going to see like, pistol buffer tubes where the tool can't go over on the Magpul. You're not going to have probably like Yankee Hill quick detach mounts for cans in a law enforcement agency, but the Magpul won't work on them. You can't get the collar over it. But I try everything I can so I can educate people that aren't just taken in by the flashiness. There's a lot of companies, and it's great because the more people that bring products to the market, the better other stuff becomes. 15 years ago, there was a handful of companies making AR armor stuff. You had to fabricate everything. And that's what I did a lot of when I first got into working on things. I think all the tools we had at the shop could fit in a small bin. I have a wall of tools behind me now. But I try everything, and I try to be honest about it. I put my foot in my mouth in one of my classes about a month back. I was talking about wrenches, and I pulled out the DPMS wrench. And I was like, this is the most worthless wrench out of all the ones that I have. I never use this anymore. And a gentleman in the class had an integrally suppressed 300 blackout that had a barrel nut that needed that darn wrench, 2 little nubs on it. So they were like, I thought you said that wrench was no good. Foot and mouth. So you never really know. I mean, not everybody can afford to have a wall of tools, but having the versatility, especially if you're going to do it either to teach or for a living, having not have to stop and hurt your productivity, having a variety of tools is a great thing. But again, it's a money thing. This stuff's really expensive if you try to buy everything. So what I like to do is to try stuff out and tell people the pros and cons, and then just try to give them the best information possible so they can make an informed decision and say, I don't need that. So, but yeah, there is a lot of junk out there. There are some stuff that I bought that I just keep to show people, hey, I wouldn't buy this, but some people buy it anyway. It'll work for a small time tinkerer, but if you're doing any kind of production work or day-to-day work, it's not going to hold up.
So what would you recommend people to have in their armor kit?
Their armor kit. You caught me a little off guard there.
Yes.
Let me turn around and look. Gauges, I'm very, very heavy on. If anyone has followed any of the work that I've put online so far, I'm very heavy towards the gauges. What I try to explain to people about those, you don't have to have a million of them, but the gauges eliminate some of the guesswork and human variables out of it. I started trying to understand why certain things wouldn't work when I was working on guns full time. I would get an AR in, the gun wouldn't cycle, and I would do basic troubleshooting. I would swap out a bolt carrier, just the bolt carrier, and the gun would start working. Why is that? I would check the carrier key screws, I would check the gas key, make sure it wasn't loose. Everything was fine. So then I would break out pin gauges and started checking things. Well, if this one has a 3 bore that has a slight variance here, maybe the gas key diameter is a little bit larger, and I would start finding things that will allow me to say, hey, I'm not just swapping parts to try to guess what's wrong with it. I was actually troubleshooting to the point where I was refining my craft. So gauges were the way to do that. I was eliminating guesswork. I could take a gun apart, drop gauges in parts, and say, okay, well, 2 things failed. Doesn't mean the gun's not going to work, but the more check marks you get for problems, the more likelihood you're going to have an issue. But gauges are probably a bigger thing in my toolbox than a lot of tools. I actually did like a tiered list about 2 months ago where people were like, you need to do a list. Put a list together of stuff you think is a bare minimum. And then I posted it, and they're like, holy crap, dude, I had to sell my car to buy it all. So I broke it down, and I was like, okay, here's the bare minimum. And I didn't gear it just towards ARs. But I broke it down. Of course, you have to have, a decent screwdriver bit kit. You don't want to be using, some Craftsman screwdrivers to take apart your guns. You need some gunsmith specific tools. Punches, I have a little punch block here. That's just a piece of Trex decking, and I put the punches in here. I color code them. It's easier for me to find them. So you need a good punch set. Something that's good about like roll pin starters is if they're AR specific and they're made by a quality manufacturer, a lot of times you can get roll pins that don't fit into these, and this works as a gauge. And people don't realize that. We're like, well, I'm having trouble banging this roll pin in. Well, is it the right size? You don't know because maybe they sent you some junk. But if it doesn't fit in this, then you know it's the wrong size. So even having a good set of starter punches and roll pin punches is you have yourself more set up for success than if you're just trying to use a cheap Chinese, brass and steel punch set. You're not going to bang stuff up. But yeah, punches, a decent work area, even if you can have a big surface, you need a vise, you need something solid to work on. You can't be putting the AR lower in between your knees. I mean, you can. I've seen people do it, but you can't be doing quality and repetitively quality work by doing stuff without having a good workstation. So a good workstation, a basic and armorer's tools. I'd say, a good armorer's wrench, the Magpul or the Tapco. For putting on receiver extensions, I like the Geisley reaction block. I don't know what I did without it before, but I did, and then I get ridiculous about things. I have like the Present Arms Gunner's mount. Those things are like $400 stuff. So most guys aren't going to get into that kind of stuff. But I broke the list down and tiered it. I can put it up on the primary and secondary page after our mod chat's up, and maybe people can get some use out of that.
As a matter of fact, specifically in the workbench group, I think that'd be very helpful.
Perfect. So I'll do that. And
yeah, thank you.
List. I'll do that because it's a big list. I think I broke it down in like 5 different sections, and I named it stuff that's funny, basic, intermediate, and then it got into like insanity and stuff. But it's a good question. You definitely caught me off guard though.
So with that in mind, how often do you update that list? How often do you find something that, wow, this changes things?
I do often, and I've flipped things around, I think 2 or 3 times since I posted the list a couple months ago. Because sometimes there's just stuff that comes out, it's like, wow. I mean, even something like the reaction block. For years, I just put a lower in a magwell block and wrenched on things. And the receiver extension would always torque, and then I'd have to correct it. With that, I can hold the pistol grip, I can make sure things don't torque. And then, like I said, the thing like the Present Arms, that's something that's for someone that bangs on guns every day. But the thing allows me to put together lowers and lightning speed with amazing precision. There's not going to be anything wrong with it. But like I said, it's a $400 setup. So that goes down on the list for people that are more geared towards professional stuff, where the reaction block, depending on whether or not it's a Black Friday, so you can get it for $100. So it's worth it, in my opinion. Some people were like, I don't want to spend $100. So then I tell them, okay, well, there's an alternative. Bowtac, they have one that costs $50. So there's another option there. But and that's what I try to do. I try to tell people, okay, if you're on a budget, I understand. I'm going to tell you what's better and then what can get you by.
So of all of your tools and stuff, what has been the biggest, I guess the phrase is game changer? What have you found to be, this changes everything for me?
For gauges?
Or for anything, any of these tools?
I would say it has been the Midwest rods, the copies of the Geisleys. I'll go get it real quick. So here's one of the Geisleys. They work great. The downside to these is that if you are a gorilla, you can break the index pin on them. People say you can't do that, but if you look at the way they work, these are basically holding the barrel in a fixed position. So this is in the vise, barrel goes in, gets locked in, and assuming the barrel nuts will spin freely, you're fine. But when that barrel nut seizes to the upper, now the upper wants to rotate when you're loosening or tightening. It shears the pin off. These in itself can work as a gauge if they're not heavily worn. So if you have an upper receiver that has a board that's too small, which is somewhat common, the tool won't go in. But it won't tell you if things are quite timed right. But basically, the reaction rod is a great tool, but Midwest decided they were going to make some changes to it. The first company that came out with it, though, was making copies for wind and weaponry, and it has the sail on the top. They put a hole in it, so you could use an alignment rod to make sure your barrel nut is lined up right. So great tool, but these things were like $300. So most people were like, no, I'm not going to do that. So Midwest came out with their version of it called the URR. It has the sail on it. It has 4 flats, so you can reorient it. It's not as quick as using the reaction rod where you can pull the upper off and rotate it. But what's great about it is, and I see this more and more commonly, not necessarily on the higher end gun, but if you're building or working on a budget gun, the barrel extension isn't always timed perfectly. So you slide this tool in, and it will tell you whether or not the barrel extension is perfect. Every I've had so far in the past 6 months, I've had one in the class that this won't go into. And they're like, well, there's something wrong with it. So then we put the bolt carrier in, and I'm like, just watch the lugs. And as the lugs of the bolt are coming home, you can see them kissing the barrel extension where the grooves are cut out. Like, we have an alignment problem here. Like, I don't understand. The barrel extension, there's only one way for it to go. I said, no, there's 180 ways for it to go, or 360 ways it can go. But you have a problem. So this has been great for detecting that kind of stuff, because in the past I would basically have to eyeball it. I'd have to put a bolt carrier in the gun, look at it, and make sure that there was just enough clearance in between the lugs of the barrel extension and the bolt to make sure there wasn't going to be any issues. Those tools are great for that until they get heavily worn. You know, the lugs peen a little bit. Probably hard to see in the video, but they do peen over a little bit. So I keep a new one as my gauge. So I tell people this tool is not just an armor's setup. This is a gauge. The upper's the right size. The charging handle channel's at 12 o'clock. It's the right width. The barrel extension time. So it gives you a little bit more feedback of what you're doing when you're putting it together, which I really appreciate. So stuff like that. I probably say that one off the top of my head. That's my favorite game changer. But they've only been out for about a year, I think.
What do you think is the most overlooked aspect of assembling an AR, or when someone buys one, what is the most overlooked aspect of it? Because I know they're talking about gas port sizes a lot now. They weren't a few years ago. Staking has always been a hot topic, whether it be the castle nut or the gas key. What do you think is, for the general public, what do you think is the most overlooked aspect?
The most overlooked is headspace. It really is, because people have bought the concept, and probably depending on your perspective, it can change. If you're a military armor, the odds of you having an AR, M16, M4 in their world, with short headspace is pretty slim to none, because the stuff that they get is heavily tested. In the civilian world, though, there's, like I said, a lot more people involved in the industry. There's people throwing their hat into the game that really have no business doing it. You have different coatings, all kinds of things that can affect tolerances. So people assume, well, AR-15s are headspace at the factory. I don't need to check headspace. Well, when you take, bolt from company A and barrel from company B, put them together, they don't always play well together, and you have short headspace, you have short throats, mainly all barrel issues. And I think other stuff that you've talked about in the past has addressed that. It's really the heart of the gun. People talk about the bolt carrier being the heart of the gun, but that really is the thing. The gas port size on the barrel, how is the chamber cut, the throat on that chamber, is it too short? What I see a lot is companies, they confuse the AR with the bolt gun. They try to do things that you do on a bolt gun to make it precise. They put a short throat on it, they put a tight chamber on it. There's no free lunch when it comes to a gas gun. You can't go super tight on stuff. You have to have a little bit of play, a little bit of float for things to run reliably if you're going to run the gun hard. Now, if you're just going to punch paper, those things might not apply. But if you're really going to run the gun hard, when it gets hot and it gets dirty, having the super tight components don't always play well. So headspace, I see a lot. So if I have a class with 8 students, they're allowed to bring 3 uppers each. So that would give, what, 24 uppers? All right. So if I have 24 uppers in an 8-person class, it's common for me to have at least a 20% failure rate on headspace. And people are blown away. They're like, no way. Like, yeah. So, and I'll break out other gauges, ones that are brand new. Like, here you go, try this gauge again. Because they think that I'm like playing games. I modified the gauge or I mislabeled it. No. You really do have to check it. And people are just blown away by it, because everyone on the internet says you don't have to check headspace. If you're buying an upper from BCM, no, you probably don't have to check headspace. But if you're putting a gun together, you need to buy some gauges. You need to make sure there's an explosion taking place a couple inches from your face. You need to use gauges. And people just aren't aware of it because they've been told repeatedly that the AR is headspaced already. Yes, it is. But you need to make sure that it's safely headspaced.
It really seems in the last 10 years, the urging, maybe maybe I'm completely in left field, because maybe it's because I'll use the word completely a couple more times. It is because I have limited the people that I associate with and the groups that I'm in. It seems in the last 10 years, the idea of just buying random parts or buying wish list parts and throwing them together as a rifle, that seems to have faded a bit. Is that okay? So it's not just me. Good.
No. Now, I will say that we always get a laugh about it, because I'd say about 30% of the guys who come to my build classes will spend more to take a class from me than they do on the gun. So they'll bring a box of parts that they spent less than what I charge to do an entire day. And they get feedback from me. They're like, okay, well, I'm trying to be on a budget here. I'm trying to spend what I would on a top tier gun with what I'm taking the class from, and then enhancements. So thankfully I can say that when I give them feedback and they actually listen, they buy, they put some Springco springs in it, they do this and they do that, they leave with some pretty solid guns. Now, there's always a lot of hiccups to make sure that gun's done right. But you can, assuming that the barrel is not a complete turd, you can usually come over some of the shortcomings with some of the budget stuff. But yeah, it is becoming less and less common. There are people that, when they talk to people that are learned, they'll say, okay, well, I'm not going to bother wrenching on something. I'm just going to buy a Sonic. I'm going to buy a Son's Liberty. I'm going to buy this. They don't want to deal with it. They just buy something they know that either it's going to be perfect out of the box, and if it's not quite perfect, then those companies will, jump and make it right. But there are still guys who have that tinkering nature. They want to know more, so they'll try to bring the biggest turd they can to my class to challenge me, and we always get a good learning experience out of it.
I bet you could have a really good video series on YouTube with that.
Yes, YouTube channel. I have one that's quite old. The only thing that I use that for now is really long format stuff. Like I have a video that I think was an hour and a half long of me just putting in 3 different triggers. And people are like, why does it take you so long to explain putting in 3 different triggers? Because I'm trying to show you what can go wrong. So it loses a lot of people's attention in our world. If you're not doing a 60-second, no one wants to listen. So
It's
it's
true.
hard to grab people's attention for format stuff. But yeah, I would like to put it onto video so people could purchase it. It's a common question that I get. They're like, well, wait a minute, there we go again. You still got me?
Yes. Your screen froze, but
well, at least they can hear me.
yeah.
But people say, well, why would I take a class and not just watch a video? And I think that it's better to at least have a video. It would be like equating watching somebody like Larry Vickers or Pat Mack or somebody showing you some tactic. It's better to at least see someone do something in a right way than to not have any information at all. But to have someone over your shoulder is a completely different thing. So it's important to have some positive feedback with someone being there saying yes, no, right, wrong, instead of you just assuming that, okay, now I'm a master at it because I watched a video.
Yeah. So what are you finding to be lacking in today's AR market?
What I see is there's a lot of companies who use the consumer as their product research and development.
Their QA, yeah.
I wish there was less of that. I'm not really a big fan of my classes are dedicated to DI style ARs only. I don't allow people with external gas piston ARs to come. I get some hate for that. But as they started becoming popular, what I noticed and I'm not going to name companies, but what I noticed is, they were selling people a product that, is the next best thing. The DI AR is junk. You need this because, the AR crap's where it eats, the things people say. You'd add a can to them and they start beating themselves up. It's like, well, if this thing was so proven, if you really tested this thing so well, why, when I add an efficient suppressor to it, does it start eating itself apart? Why does it start breaking bolts? Why does it eat the return spring cup? Why is it doing this? Because you didn't test it. And it drives me nuts. And it happens in the regular AR world too, not just gas piston, but it irritates me that they allow people to be the guinea pigs for their product. And there are plenty of people who would happily test stuff out if they really wanted some feedback. But I just don't think they care enough to do it. They just want to sell some snake oil, and it irritates me. But I like where the AR market is. We have a lot of competition. Competition is good for innovation. But with that, you get a lot of junk, and it's hard for the guy who doesn't live and breathe this stuff to know the good from the bad.
And it's a shame because we have those people that, mere ownership is the only metric they have for expertise, but they are sure an expert.
Yep. 1 million rounds, no problem.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just as good mafia.
Yeah. So what are the biggest myths that you encounter when troubleshooting ARs, or just myths in general that you hear?
The biggest thing has to do with like cleanliness. People are like, well, I'm having problems, and the first thing people will throw out, well, I cleaned it. I don't care if it's cleaned or not. I just want you to chunk some lube on it. I want you to feed it some good magazines, number your magazines so if you have a junk magazine. Try some variety there. Always diversify with your magazine selection and use some factory ammunition. On the gunsmithing side, most of the people that came in, I could eliminate probably 80% or more problems with the AR based on lubrication. It's the whole MEAL acronym. Magazines, ammunition, lubrication, and the right springs. You put good springs in the gun, you feed it with good ammo, put a good mag in it, and lubricate it. And most, even the bad ones, will run at least a little while. People don't do that, though. They just assume it has to be clean. So they'll break out scraping tools, and they got to get every bit of carbon off that gun. I'm like, hey, calm down. put away the Scotch Brite pads. This is not the U.S. military. You do not have to make that black gun shiny. But people still do it. They still do it. They can't help themselves. They've been taught. A big part of my armorers classes has to do with that. You used the term at the beginning of the chat. It was, what was it? Institutional, was
Inertia.
it momentum? Inertia, institutional inertia. I like that. And that's what's happened with firearms in general, specifically the AR. Because of its teething problems in the early days, people were convinced that it has to be clean. So people in general with firearms still treat modern weapons that shoot modern ammo like it was a brown bess from the Revolutionary War. Those guns you had to clean when you shot them. When you had corrosive primer ammo, you had to clean those guns after you shot them. You couldn't just shoot it and put it away if you didn't want to have something rusted. So up until, what, the 60s, you had to clean your gun when you were done shooting. With modern ammunition, modern lubricants, modern firearms with the coatings that we have, you don't have to do that, but people still do it. And in most cases, they cause damage when it's not necessary. Got to get it clean though.
Funny how that works.
Mm-hmm.
Lubrication, huh?
Who knew this thing needed that?
Yeah.
Well, the AR industry does that. They have parts they say you don't need to lube, so it makes it even worse.
Yes. Any specific lubrications that you endorse or advise people to use over others?
I'm sort of a mad scientist when it comes to lube. I have my own little home brew that I use. It's a mixture of motor oil and grease. So it's like a mayonnaise concoction. It's when it's done. It doesn't look like mayonnaise, but it has the consistency of mayonnaise. But I tell people that the stuff that Geisley's making with their thin grease and their Go Juice is really good stuff. You can get stuff from Lucas. You can get the Cherry Bombs, make some really good lubricants. But I always tell people, if you're not willing to be the tester, don't tinker with lubricants. Don't try to mix, the motor oil that I do. If you're not going to put it in your gun, let it sit outside in the cold temperature to see if it's going to cause you a problem. Don't do that. Buy something that's made specifically for the purpose and use it until you're ready to really put it through its paces. But those lubes do really well. Cherry Bombs and the Geisley stuff I like a lot. Slip works good. Pretty much any of the well accepted stuff that the people who train will use, I don't have a problem with at all. But I use a lot of lubricant, so the expensive stuff I go through very fast. So that's why I use my homebrew stuff.
And it tastes great.
Yes.
Okay. Where are the most common failures in ARs that you're encountering?
Most common stuff, we'll fall back to those other things, the MEAL acronym, magazines, ammunition. But outside of that, what's is feed ramp issues. And this sort of falls in line with the magazine. Depending on what magazine you choose, they have different feed angles. Some of them will completely miss M4 ramps, won't even touch them, or some of them will put them right at the M4 ramp. So if you don't have feed ramps that play well together, the way I explain it in my class is this is your upper receiver ramp, and this is your barrel extension. They should be like this, so when the projectile hits, it goes up nice and smooth. Some do this. So when the projectile tries to come up the M4 ramp, it hits a little roofing shingle. It won't feed up, so it'll jam the projectile into the casing. It'll cause it to yaw and then sit in the chamber. Not true. It can damage the projectile. All those things can cause the gun not to be as reliable as it should be. Feed ramps are a big issue. Headspace is a big issue. Even things like firing pin protrusion, people don't check. I'd say probably 1 in every 20 guns has firing pin protrusion right on the very low tolerance. So you get the gun a little dirty, the springs aren't performing right, the fire control group's a little foul, and the gun goes click. People just start pulling their hair out. I don't understand what's wrong. And it's just that. The firing pin's just not sticking out far enough. Something so stupid and simple, but people don't think to look at it. Beyond that, it's probably fire control groups. There's so many companies making junk. And I don't want to name names, but there's a lot of junk out there. I hate cassette triggers. Drop-in triggers. I hate them. So many problems from them. But people just, they got to have them. They're like, oh, well, they feel so great. Feel the trigger isn't the thing that makes the gun work well. It's hammer speed. I'd rather have a hammer that drops the hammer hard than to have one that has a trigger that feels good. But people, they don't want to listen. They want that light trigger. They want that really smooth trigger. I want a hammer that's moving fast and ignites the primer consistently and effectively. But fire control groups, yep, a lot of people make stuff that is real junk.
So what is your advice to someone who is new and about to buy an AR-15? What are things they need to be looking for?
I would say try to pick a company who's willing to give you some information about it. So the companies who like to hog out, let's say, the gas ports on a barrel, they won't tell you that it's really big. They won't tell you that it's hogged out. If you try to contact them, they'll give you some vague answers. Well, we port our guns so it'll work with, brass case and steel case. You really need, not all companies that do build good barrels will tell you those specs because they put a lot of time into it. They're not going to tell everyone on the phone, well, oh, by the way, we make gas port for this side, and this side, so now our competition can copy what we're doing. So some companies won't do it, but it's hard because there are some good barrels out there that won't tell you that information. But overall, I try to tell them just ask people that can be considered trustworthy. And there's not that many barrels out there that I would pick up and just drop into a gun without really looking it over. So it's a hard sell. I'd say that I could give you, but maybe a handful of answers of barrels that I would choose without really having to run a bunch of gauges through it and doing some inspections and maybe doing some modifications to it before I trusted it. I tell people if they're going to buy a whole gun now, try factory ammo. Don't try to reload for it right out of the gate. It's going to cause you some troubleshooting problems. That offends some reloaders, but reloaders tend to have a lot of problems with gas guns. But try some ammo, lube it up well. Don't be scared to lube it up, and try a variety of magazines. And then don't throw a bunch of accessories on it. People they get their gun and they roll it through a Tafco catalog and like, oh yeah, I got these NC Starlights and lasers on it. No, stop. All the money you spent on that, you could have saved and bought yourself a good trigger, and not a junk trigger. But they don't do that. So just take it out, shoot it, get some good training from somebody who will teach you how to pull that trigger and be effective with the gun before you even consider talking to somebody like me. Make sure that you're safe with it. Make sure you know how to use it, and then then you can go down your journey a little further if you want to get into banging on guns.
I do remember something that Will Larson would talk about, specifically about barrels, and it was kind of funny. And it was specifically about those CIA barrels, those that don't have any markings on them at all. That is a clue. Avoid it. If you're buying a gun and it has no markings on the barrel, you probably don't want that barrel.
Yep. There's a lot of fixes out there too. If someone is adamant about buying one of those barrels, and they have for people that take my classes, I'll tell them, yeah, you can bring that barrel to the class. And we're probably going to see problems with it. And I'm going to have some Black River Tactical inserts that we're probably going to have to use in your gas block. And they're like, well, how much does that cost? I'm like, well, here's what the insert costs. I have the tools to install it. Or you could buy the gas tube. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why does that gas tube cost so much? Because your barrel's cheap. So you're going to pay one way or the other. So fortunately, and this is one of the things that's good about the market, is there's been so many people that have innovated because of the bad stuff out there that we can fix some of the shortcomings. It's sad that we have to do that, but pretty much no matter how bad it is, as long as headspace is safe, there are fixes across the board now we can do with even the cheapest of ARs to make it run how it's supposed to. It's just going to cost you. So you could have saved by buying it right the first time, or you can put some fixes into it to remedy those shortcuts the manufacturers took. I understand why they take them. People buy imported ammo. They buy steel case ammo. It has low port pressure. They want it to cycle. The manufacturers, instead of getting a bunch of calls from people saying it won't cycle woof, will oversize the gas ports. So they're trying to minimize problems. Then you put factory NATO spec ammo, something that's hot in there, and now the gun's overgassed. It's crap. So it's a hard balance, and people don't want to be told, well, pick a gun based on quality ammunition. They're like, well, I want to shoot cheap stuff. Well, you have to decide what you want to do. Do you want to have a military vehicle that will run on used Popeyes chicken grease, or do you want to put some gas station fuel into there? You really got to pick your battle and pick the right purpose of the gun. And people don't do that. They're not focused enough to realize what they want to build the gun for, or buy the gun for. They want an AR, and they get that window licker syndrome where they just see something and just I can have it. They don't think it through. I have a couple buddies that are like that. One of the guys that I started SOTAR with, he's notorious for that. He'll go into a store and he has no intentions of buying something. It doesn't matter what it is. He'll leave the store with something because something shiny caught his eye. And then he'll tell me about it, and I'm like, why'd you do that? But I love him anyway. He's just impulsive. You know who you are. I know you're watching.
So what is your advice to those that bought maybe it's a less desirable AR? What can they do to retrofit it to make it almost up to par?
Check some of the videos and stuff that I put on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, some little tips and tricks to check out stuff. But overall, you just need to put some time behind the gun. Yep, chambering live round. That's a good indicator if something's going on, even without gauges. So people are like, well, I don't want to buy gauges. You don't use live rounds as a method to check headspace, but if factory ammunition is fighting you, getting it back out of the chamber, there's something wrong with your gun. Shouldn't be doing that. Some people will say, well, put tape on the back of live rounds or casings, and no, brass is soft. It's going to conform to the chamber. You don't do that to check headspace. But yeah, just something as simple as seeing how difficult it is to get a live round out of the chamber can tell you whether or not your gun's right.
Cool. Are you ready for some questions from the viewers?
Fire away.
Brandon is looking for more info on why using different Springco springs is super helpful.
I like Springco springs because they give you a variety. A lot of people will use springs like the ones that Geisley makes, the S42. And they tend to be good for guns that are gassy, but that gives you one option. So the odds of you having the perfect balance for that spring there with what may be going on with your gun may or may not help you. Where Springco, they have, 5, if you're using a carbine spring, I think, different choices. So depending on whether your gun's undergassed, overgassed, properly gassed, depending on the ammo you shoot, it gives you a lot of variety there. Unfortunately, there's no true chart. Clint at Black River Tactical is really helpful. Like if you have a gun and you don't want to play with springs, you could always call him, use the website. It has a drop-down box, and it'll tell you, you tell it what kind of buffer you're using, what kind of spring you're using, what your gas system length is, and there's a lot of variables. He'll ask you the question, suppressed or not, and he'll tell you the gas port size you should be running as far as one of its gas tube goes. So you could use different springs in the back. It's either balancing it on the back end or up front where the gas is coming in to balance it out. But I like Springco because the springs last, they're quality. But they're really the only good option out there. It's really a one-stop shop. There's nobody else that does what he does with what he offers. You can buy factory springs and they work fine if your gun's running in the proper range, but without Springco, we'd be sort of in the dark ages still with ARs.
Cool. What do you know about the circumference of a baseball? And Randy says hi.
Randy, he was the one that said he was going to crack.
Yes, it was.
Oh, man. I don't know, Randy. You tell me. Probably going to send you a picture of something that's not appropriate.
Yeah, probably. This one I kind of asked at the beginning, and we'll see if maybe we'll think of something together. YouTube channel. How do you assess a competent gunsmith when you're looking to get work done?
ask them to look at some of the tools. A gunsmith that has the right stuff is proud to show them off. He'll bring a box or a case up and say, here's what I work with when I'm dealing with the AR. They'll start talking, you won't be able to shut them up. That's a good indicator. And usually once they fill in their guts, then they start telling you whether or not they know what they think they know. But that's usually my advice. If you haven't taken class from somebody who tells you, all these things we're looking for, usually they will talk themselves into a ditch if they don't know what they're talking about. But the ones that have an affinity for it will be like, oh yeah, I'll show you all my gauges. Here's what I got. Look at this. And they're proud of it.
Randy has this question. This one I really like because I see this trend as well. It seems the standard approach to a new rifle is to run an H buffer. Is that due to wider spectrum of dwell time over a lighter or heavier buffer? Do you recommend a particular buffer for a build?
Usually the H buffer is where I like to start, just because if you don't rip apart the gas system, you don't have pin gauges, you're making a lot of guesses. So the H buffer is really the bare minimum. It is possible you could have a gun that's just underported and you need a carbine buffer, or even get in touch with Springco and get their negative power spring. They have one that's a little bit lighter, and see if it'll work. You don't want to clip springs, of course, that's not good. But sometimes you need less buffer weight and less spring. Generally, that's not a gas port that's too small. And that's a simple explanation. Usually it's an inefficient gas system. And people are like, well, what does that mean? So you have a lot of places for gas in the AR to bleed. It can bleed between the gas block and the barrel. It can bleed between the gas tube and the gas block. It can bleed between the gas key and the gas tube if there's not a good interface between the gas key and the carrier. And then if the bolt carrier has a larger diameter where the bolt tail and the gas ring seal, it can be inefficient there. So there's all kinds of variables that can cause it to be inefficient. So you have to be cognizant of that. Sometimes you can see if a system's inefficient. I had a bolt carrier that a guy sent me out of the blue. He was on Facebook. He was like, look, I have this AR and the gun is beating me to death. I put a BCM bolt carrier in it and the gun stopped. So there's something about this bolt carrier that's causing this gun to recoil really hard. And what I immediately thought was that the carrier was short and the gas key was coming back and smacking the lower. I was wrong. Everything measured out great on this bolt carrier. It was nickel boron. The inner diameter of the 3-bore on the bolt tail and the gas ring run and the bolt itself had such a close tolerance fit that there was absolutely no carbon or any kind of gases bleeding when that gun was pressurizing. And it was just taking the brunt of all of the efficiency of the gas system. So he must have had a very efficient seal for the gas block to the barrel, the gas tube to the gas block, and the gas tube to the gas key. And then when that efficient carrier took all that gas, it was just brutal, according to him. He said it was night and day, just swapping the bolt carrier. But it's a neat example for the classes. People are like, well, that really doesn't make much sense. It's just something as minor as that can make the difference in a gun working and not. If you have a gun that's under gas and you put that super efficient carrier in it, it's probably going to run. So there's always those kinds of variables, and it drives people crazy trying to troubleshoot, because how do you know if your gas system's efficient if you don't see stuff bleeding out? It's brand new. You haven't shot it. So there's a lot of guesswork.
One of my favorite discussions on Facebook, maybe 5 years ago, was talking to all these home builders having issues, and the gun's just not running right. I'm going to put on an adjustable gas block. Whoa! Before we do anything permanent, why don't we change out some easier things? If you're not going to do it right, let's just
Yep.
Kids.
And that's something that I tell people about adjustables is there's a lot to an adjustable gas block. For years, they were all junk. There's only one company that if somebody's adamant about one that I would recommend to put on a gun, because they're easy to maintain. But the caveats is that adjustables leak. So if you have a gun, let's say you have a well put together BCM gun, they don't hog out their gas ports. Or let's say you have a Sonics that has one of the optimized ports, and you put an adjustable in there, the gun's going to stop running because they bleed. All those little orifices and parts, they bleed. So the gun has to be gassed in a manner to overcome the inefficiency that you're introducing with an adjustable. People don't think about that. And the companies who make them don't tell you that. And then they're a maintenance item. So you're done shooting. You don't just put it away with oil adjustment, move it out. And people have to spend, there we go. You're losing me.
Nope.
You got me still?
Mostly, yes.
Mostly. But people have to spend time behind the gun to really figure one out, and people don't want to put the homework in to do that. So for 99% of users, an adjustable is not the way to go.
Well, I can't even imagine how many people own rifles and have never actually zeroed them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody's ready for the big boogaloo, but their guns aren't zeroed.
I'll just do it when I get there.
They'll just guess.
Yeah.
They'll put tracers in it and just walk it in.
Okay, this is an especially pertinent question. Is Chad's doppelganger literally the white meme cat correcting the crazy woman or not? I'm not seeing it.
The spirit is there, but I don't think the looks are the same. Definitely the same heart, though. I love that cat. He's definitely my spirit animal.
Is it possible to tune for both suppressed and unsuppressed without the need for an adjustable gas block?
Yes, if you stick with one type of ammo, you can find that happy medium. But if you're gonna, and this is something that not everybody in the AR industry likes to hear, but if you're going to use the gamut of selection of ammunition, probably not. If you're intent on feeding it a little bit of everything, probably not. You're going to have to do something to accommodate for it, whether it be putting in a heavier spring coast spring when you have hotter ammo or a heavier buffer. Maybe picking a less efficient suppressor is a better choice. Some suppressors are just so darn efficient that it causes problems. Some aren't. You got to do some homework there, though. A lot of variables. It's hard to do that, but it can be done. But you gotta say, I'm going to shoot this one type of ammo, and then base that setup around that. It can be done.
What are your thoughts on other calibers for the AR platform? 7.62 by 3.9. Oh, I can't believe this person wrote this one. 5.7. 50 Beowulf.
The big bore stuff, like the 458 and the 50 Beowulf, I don't work with much. I think I can count on maybe my hands and another person's how many I've worked on combined, so I really don't give advice about those. They're niche guns. I'm not saying that they're pointless. I don't see enough of them to give advice. 300 Blackout I work on a lot of. The ammunition selection on the market can cause a lot of problems. There's just a lot of quality issues with ammunition out there with 300 Blackout. I don't know why, but that's a popular caliber. 7.62 39 is real popular, but it's hard to build one that I would consider reliable because the magazines that are out there are sort of, I tell people if they're dead set on building one of those to buy a variety of magazines and immediately take them out and try them, find out which ones work and which ones don't, and then return the ones that don't. But they can be a bear to build reliably. They can be done. But the sad part is the guys that want to build those guns are normally guys that are used to buying like $80 SKSs at the gun shows in 1995. So they don't want to spend money. It costs a good bit of money to build a 7.62 39 AR to the point where you could probably just buy a complete gun from a manufacturer that is set up for it already. But it can be done. It just takes a lot of work.
How have law tactical folders changed the way you work on guns?
I love law folders. The tool that law is selling now is probably the thing that makes me like them even more. When I first started working on law folders, I hated the little flat stamped steel tool because once you installed it, it was pretty much married to the gun. I had a lot of difficulty getting that little castle nut device out. But I have the little socket wrench now. I love them. But law folders are great because what it allows you to do, and people aren't aware of this, beyond it being cool and you can fold the gun and make it small, is that like the whole Anderson is beating up my buffer issue. Law now makes a spacer that you can put on the carrier insert to push the buffer further back. So now your buffer damage issue can go away just by installing a low tactical folder, because it allows you to time where that buffer sits in relation to the upper receiver and the length of the bolt. So they allow you to eliminate some problems on guns that are subpar by just having that little add-on feature. They don't come with it, but if you contact Low Tactical, though, I think it's like $5 or something for the spacer, but I love it for that. They think forward and think, well, what can we do to be a value-added accessory beyond, having a cool folding feature. So I think it's great. Love that thing.
When putting on a new barrel, if there's a little slot between the barrel extension and upper, do you recommend red Loctite method, metal shim, or don't care about slop? Have you seen any difference in accuracy with your preferred method?
Yes, it depends on the purpose of the gun, though, and this can be highly debated. The way that I usually try to get people to think about it, not necessarily to win an argument, but I tell people, companies like Sons of Liberty, companies like Bravo Company, the upper receiver nose is tight. It needs a thermal fit, right? People say yes. There is a benefit for that because they make it tight for a reason. They want there to be a good interface between the barrel and the upper. Tighter is better for consistency. So if you have something that's sloppy, how is adding something in there to do what a better upper will give you a bad thing? And then the caveat there is, what are you doing to make it tight? Are you using JB Weld? No, that's not good. If you're using red Loctite, it's not made for that. But if you're using something like Loctite 620, which is a sleeving compound, that will work. If you're using shims, which I have, I can show everyone. A box of stainless shim here, and the stuff looks like aluminum foil, and this is exactly what I use it for. But this box here will run you $60. There's a lot of it in here. You'll never use this in a lifetime. But if you have access to it, you wrap this around the barrel extension. I mean, this is a big piece, but you'd fit it and then sleeve it in there to eliminate the slop. And I have seen, on paper, on average, you see maybe a 10% increase in performance. And that's an average. Some guns, there's no change at all. I may have 10 guns that I will bed for somebody, and if they've shot them before they were bedded, the barrel being bedded to the upper, no change. And then some are significant. Some are, you cut down 50%. We're talking a very loose interface. It becomes more difficult to work on the gun, though, if you do that. So if you're using Loctite to put the barrel in, you can't just heat up the upper and pull the barrel out like you could with a thermal fit upper. You can do that with a Bravo Company with heat, but when you're dealing with Loctite 620, you need a good vise, you need heat, you need a padded hammer, you need a little more technique with it. So there's a lot of downsides, but there can be good sides if you know how to do it right. But a lot of people use the wrong methods and materials, and they're just not doing it right. But Loctite 609 is popular with like Criterion. I use Loctite 620 because it has a higher thermal rating. I also teach people about the shimming method in my classes, but this can be a real pain. This is more precise than the Loctite, but you have to be very careful. You get it into the threads, you'll get your barrel nut seized up. You're not going to get the barrel nut off easy. It can wreak a lot of havoc if you don't do it right.
And it looks like we had a slight adjustment. This would be for a precision rifle.
Yep, precision rifle, and that's where it would apply. If you're building, just a banger where you're just hammering out ammo, not necessary. But if you wanted to really squeeze as much as you could out of a gun, those are things that I tell people to consider. But you need to think about the way you're doing it.
So high power matches, 200 to 600 yards. Yep. Let's see here. Okay. Is the standard carbine buffer, C, too light for a reliable forward momentum when pushing through fouling? Or is it otherwise acceptable in terms of duty grade reliability, provided the barrel is ported lightly?
I would say it's probably still too light, especially if you're running like an older AR-15 carrier. You've already had some weight removed from it. If you're running an M16 carrier, you may be able to get away with it, but you're dancing on a hair there. It's something I would say, you're talking $30. Save the car 15, the standard buffer for your range bag, and use it for troubleshooting. So if you're ever at the range and you have problems and you think you're undergassed, put the carbine buffer in there. Use it for troubleshooting, but don't depend on it for your life. I wouldn't. It's $30.
Yeah, it's interesting how H has taken over. And also for anyone listening or watching, if your buffer has no markings, that might be a clue that it's time to get something that actually has markings. It's kind of like the CIA barrel.
Let me get something real quick as far as that goes.
Yeah. It's like Santa's workshop.
I apologize, Matt. I had to go through all my little bins. I have these little bins of things that I pass around in my classes to show people, this is how things should work. Here's how they should look. So regular AR buffer, you have your little buffer pad, your buffer. There's a hole in them. They go together, and then you have a roll pin that goes in. It works. And then you have this unmarked buffer. One of the big signs that you have a problem is you have a solid colored bumper. It's hard plastic. Then this just fell apart on somebody's gun. Now this is a Chinesium buffer, but look, you can just pull it apart.
And your video froze, but if you can describe it. Oh, your video's back.
Video's back?
Yeah.
But yeah, look, the threads don't even hold. Chinesium.
And what was inside? Was it a powder?
Wasn't a powder. It was 3 weights. They were steel, but look, they didn't even make them the same size. You have a big one and then 2 other size ones. So they can't even make the buffer weights consistent. So a lot of quality there. But again, no marking on the front. So there's a lot of junk out there. And you might have the unmarked buffer that's a Chinesium one. So having it as a troubleshooting one may be even more troublesome than before. So at least make sure it's a not cheap unmarked buffer.
So I really like this question. Chad, I can't even ask. I can't even talk. You're Chad. This is Todd. Todd is asking, if not already covered, could you cover tolerance stacking in relation to people trying to throw parts into their guns?
Tolerance stacking. Yes. Let me find. I'll use the headspace gauge as an example. Let me get one real quick. All right, hopefully I can get a good image here and it doesn't die on us.
It is frozen right now. Oh, there it goes.
There we go. You guys got me, Matt?
Yep.
All right, headspace gauge. This is a 5.56 go. I have a Colt takeoff barrel here. So this barrel is good. I know that it is because I use it as a class example. I'm going to drop the headspace gauge in, and I'm going to use a used bolt. It's stripped out. Put it in. You can see that I'm turning the bolt, right? So it at least closes on a go. No magic here. Another bolt. Palmetto. Brand new. Now I marked it red for the class, so it's designated, hey, don't anybody throw this in your gun. But brand new, won't close.
If they do, joke's on them.
That's tolerance stacking right there. We have a good barrel. I have other gauges that I use. I have a barrel extension headspace gauge. It sort of looks like you've married these two parts together, and you'll drop that into the chamber, and that'll tell me whether or not the barrel's right. But if you're using a headspace gauge, it only tells you one of these two is misbehaving, and you have to do some troubleshooting. Well, then try another bolt. I know this barrel's good, but that's an example of tolerance stacking. This tells me that these two parts should interface within a certain range. This didn't do its job. So that's where the gauges come into play.
And it is possible to have absolute crap parts, which all of them are somewhat working fairly well together, but you'll never know until you actually test it and actually shoot your damn gun.
Yep. 1,000 PSI bomb.
What are your thoughts on lapping receiver faces for home builders?
Most guys shouldn't do it. It can be beneficial if you know that the upper receiver face is out, assuming you're using the right methods to see if it's out. But if you're using just a hand drill, you can load the tool if the tool doesn't fit right. Again, I have more examples that I show people in classes, but the lapping tools that people use, they have a service life. They work for about 5 uppers before there's a groove that starts getting cut into the of them, and they don't cut the receiver square anymore. So unless you have a lathe where you can square off that face or pay someone to do it, your tool lasts forever. So you can't buy one of those tools and do 10 uppers. It has a life to it. If you have a thermal fit upper, like a Bravo company, you can't use that because if you have to heat the front of the gun up, now the tool doesn't fit right because there's slop. The whole point of the tool is so it fits snug into the upper receiver. So there's a lot of caveats involved in that. I actually have a write-up that I'm working on about it. But that tool has to fit perfectly in the upper. It has to be lubricated, and the tool has to be perfectly square, and you have to use it in a method that doesn't load the tool and put pressure to one side or the other. And most people just don't do that right. So I would say unless you've been taught how to do it right, it's probably best to avoid it. But if you're going to do it, it's usually beneficial if you have a gun that has irons that are maxed out. You can't get them over any further, and you can't get point of aim, point of impact down. And that's where I used to use them a lot in mass, and I would actually chuck them up in a lathe and do it before the lapping tools were available. But you can use the lapping tool, but again, a lot of caveats. You got to use it right. So most people, I would say, unless you've been trained, it's not a good camera.
Do you have a favorite rail for durability and ease of use?
I'll probably get burned for this, but I like the older quad rails. They're beefy. They don't bend. The industry has moved towards a lot of lightweight stuff, which I think is went too far as pendulum swing. And I think we're going to see it bounce back out eventually. And the internet don't like me.
Any specific brand?
I like the rails that Sons of Liberty has, Zev rails, Hodge rails. Anything that's wedge lock or pinch lock is very rugged, regardless of the configuration of the rail. Good stuff. But like I said, I like the older free-floated quad rail stuff. They're beefy, but again, not popular anymore because they're heavy. But I like things that are durable, so it's not always in style.
Is it normal for the weights to be loose in the buffer?
Yes, unless you have something that has powder in it. Very normal. Some of the buffer systems that are out there have a biasing spring in it, so you won't feel as much as the rattle, but you should be able to feel something on a good buffer system.
Any non-standard AR parts, for example, the A5 system, that would be considered necessary or highly recommended for most builds?
No. The A5 is really the non-standard thing that I really gravitate towards. And again, it's a fine balance that you have to play, because the whole reason that I don't like gas piston ARs is because there's no standard. And if one company stops making that variant, then you're stuck with something that you may or may not be able to convert, affordably anyway. But yeah, the A5, I really like it. I mean, really the only difference is you have a longer buffer. The rifle link springs, they're not uncommon. You just have a slightly longer tube and a longer buffer. And if you're not grossly overgassed, I'm sure that that Viltor might have some info, but I've never seen anyone wear out a Viltor A5 buffer. And if you do, you could always just put a new buffer pad from a non-H marked buffer and it should work. You could just rebuild it yourself. So I can't foresee ever wearing one out, but if you had to rebuild one, you just put new components in it and a pad on the back and you'll be good to go.
And I think this will be the last question. Your view on things like the JP buffer springs or the CSC or SCS.
They take something that worked and make it more complex. People are obsessed with having something quiet, and they're adding, and again, someone could use the argument that I use for like Springco springs. There's multiple, so you can tune the gun, but it's easy to tune them with those. I've never had a Springco spring in a gun that refused to run because it was just a little too heavy or a little too light. I've had countless guns that would not run with these silent style captured springs in it. Pull them out, put a standard buffer system in it, not an A5, just a standard system in it, and they run. There's too much going on with them to be worth that squeeze. I don't like them at all. I'm not a fan. People bring them to classes still when they're like, well, tell me how to make it better. And I'm like, you can take it out of the gun. So, but not a fan of those. And I'm sure that might upset some people, and I don't mean to. It's not an insult on them or their intelligence. It's one of those things that I think might work for somebody who spends a whole lot of time behind the gun and competes with it. But outside of that venue, I don't see any benefit to it. Not for me.
Cool. Now for the most important part, your final thoughts and where can people find you?
You can find me at schooloftheamericanrifle.com. That's my website. I don't have a fancy website. I don't update it with all kinds of flashy information. I am working on updating that because I got Zuckerberg on my Facebook account, and a lot of that stuff got locked out, and I do update a lot of information on Facebook. So Facebook's probably the best way to interact with me. I announce my classes on my website and on Facebook. I also have an Instagram account. They're both School of the American Rifle. But if you want to get in touch with me, I try to help people as much as I can. I'm always limited on that, but I try to help people. I upload videos, all kinds of helpful information about the AR, try to teach people, regardless of whether or not you take a class from me. The whole intent of it is to share the knowledge. So the more that I put out there and the more people learn, the happier I am. I'm not looking to book my classes. If you want to take a class from me, love to have you, but I'm not the kind of guy that's going to say, I'm not going to teach you something because you're not going to pay me. So Facebook's the best way.
Good stuff.
Until they ban me.
Yeah, I know how that is. Well, thanks. Great discussion. Don't be surprised if you come back for probably a Gun Nerds and follow on discussions.
I'd be honored. I really appreciate it, Matt.
Yeah, this was a good time. So thanks to Chad. Great discussion. I think it's time to say thanks to the sponsors. Big thanks to Filster Holsters. If you're looking for some low-profile methods of carrying medical gear on your body, check out Filster. They have a lot of very low-profile stuff. Some little tiny elastic what are they called? Sleeves, not thieves. Sleeves to put medical stuff in. That you have the flat pack for your tourniquets. Good stuff. Facts on Firearms. If you need barrels, if you need some parts, if you need uppers. Specifically, Nate with his pistol caliber carbine stuff. If you're interested in that, you might want to check it out. Walther Firearms, again, that PPQ. That's awesome. Wonderfully priced as well. If you're nearby, if you know me, I'm happy to take you out shooting so you can try it for yourself. I can even loan it out to you. If you happen to go to a gun store and they have them available, or even a range that has them available for range, check it out. I'm pretty sure you're going to be impressed with it because they are truly a great pistol. Also, big thank you to our Patreon subscribers. Without your support, we wouldn't be able to do this. We have a lot of cogs in this big machine. The podcast is one of them, but we also have a forum and we have a website. We have all kinds of groups. We have different projects that we work on, various media things, videos, audio, all that kind of stuff. Additionally, there's, video hosting, video editing, audio hosting, all kinds of stuff. Really excited about our big training event next year. I will be talking a lot more in depth next month about this, but all your favorite primary and secondary personalities, you know what? There's a good chance they're going to be there. But those Patreon subscribers, they're going to get first dibs at this because there's limited seating. Well, it's not really seating. There's some seating to it. A lot of it's standing, and a lot of it's pressing triggers, but that's another story. Lastly, big thanks to all of those that provide feedback, that subscribe, that give us likes, because those are greatly appreciated and needed. Gives me an idea of where we're going, gives me an idea also of what we need to emphasize, what we need to de-emphasize. Works out really well. That feedback is nice to have. Make sure you're supporting those sources that you've found to be beneficial. If you like what Chad has to say, make sure you're following him on all the social medias. If you like Varg Freeborn's work, if you like Bill Blowers, Scott Jedlinski, all those guys, I guess that Chuck Pressburg as well. Make sure you're following them on social media, because that is always appreciated. And that kind of footprint kind of helps them determine where they're going as well. Because we have some friends in the industry who are very close to calling it quits because, they're just not getting that feedback. It's just not lucrative, and they're going to go and do other things. So you can find us on, let's see here, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, like 760 different groups on Facebook. But yeah, website, forum, all that kind of stuff. Thanks for watching and listening. I think I'm going to stop talking. Yeah, I got to work in the morning, so I'll talk to you guys later.